Hey guys, tonight you're going to time travel somewhere loud, smoky, and slightly cursed. A place where the stew is suspicious, the ale is warm, and the floors have never been clean. You're visiting a medieval tavern. Before we stagger through that crooked door, do me a favour. Like the video and subscribe, but only if you'd survive drinking from a clay mug with something floating in it. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is for you. I love knowing who's drifting off with me from across the globe, whether it's midnight in Toronto or 2 AM in Warsaw. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that low medieval hum. Get cosy, and let's begin. You've made a terrible decision. It probably started with a shortcut through a flooded alley, or maybe trusting that merchant with the lopsided hat, who swore this road was well travelled and safe after sundown. Now, you're drenched, half-starving, and ankle-deep in something you pray is just old cabbage water. You are, you suppose, a traveller. Not the noble kind, not the roguish kind, and certainly not the well-paid kind. You're the sort of traveller whose boots have more holes than leather, whose coin pouch holds more lint than silver, and whose cloak smells suspiciously like pickled fish and regret. You're not important, you're not wanted, and yet you're here. You've got a name, probably, but no one will use it. Tonight you'll be called You There, Oi, or that one with the weird shoes. You've been walking for hours through roads that were more theoretical than physical. The mud sucked at your soles like it had a grudge, and every cart that passed you managed to hit a puddle with the precision of a trained sniper. Your legs ache, your stomach complains audibly, and you've been sneezed on twice by a goat that absolutely should not have been that high up on a balcony. The sky above you is a heavy slate blanket of damp clouds, pressing low enough that it feels personal. Rain has either just finished falling, or is about to start again. The weather in this part of the world doesn't do clear skies, just varying flavours of wet. The kind of wet that seeps into seams you forgot existed. The kind that makes you feel like someone cursed you with eternal dampness just for fun. You pass under a crooked wooden arch that someone somewhere once called a town gate. It's barely standing now, held together by sheer stubbornness and the occasional nail that looks older than memory. On either side, torch sconces flicker uncertainly in the wind, casting shadows that shift just enough to make you question whether the post was leaning, or if your vision is just starting to tilt from hunger. A sign hangs off one of the beams. It sways in the breeze with a tired creak, showing the faded image of either a jug, a duck, or a shoe. The paint has peeled so badly that it's now just an abstract statement. Perhaps this is modern art. Perhaps it's a warning. Either way, it marks the edge of civilization. Not the polished, preened civilization you'd read about in ballads, but the kind that smells like stew and consequences. The first sounds that hit your ears are a cacophony of life lived just slightly too loudly. Someone's yelling, not conversational yelling. Full volume, existential yelling about turnips. Somewhere else, metal clangs against metal. Maybe a blacksmith, maybe a duel. Children are running barefoot through the slop, screaming with joy or terror, hard to say. A woman pours a bucket of something off a second-story ledge with no regard for gravity or your head. You duck just in time. The splash hits the cobblestones behind you with a sizzle that suggests it may have once been food, or possibly soap. You don't look back. You don't make eye contact. You just keep moving forward, because somewhere ahead, past the market stalls and the piles of fish that are somehow both frozen and rotting, lies what you came for. The tavern. You don't know its name. You never do. Taverns in this era rarely announce themselves with subtle signage or tasteful lighting. Instead, they exude a kind of gravitational pull. You can hear it before you see it. The clink of mugs, the low thrum of overlapping conversations. The occasional crash followed by silence, then laughter. The scent of smoke, meat, sweat, and beer wafts through the air like a promise. Your steps quicken, not because you're excited, but because you're one bad meal away from chewing your own belt. You pass a toothless vendor trying to sell you something in a jar, something moving, and you wave them off. A dog growls at you from beneath a cart. You don't make sudden moves. Someone offers to shine your shoes for a fee, and then immediately offers to sell you back your own shoes. You decline. Finally, you see it, the tavern. It leans precariously against two other buildings like it gave up trying to stand straight centuries ago. The roof is thatched and uneven. The door is heavy, iron-hinged and cracked, as if it's been kicked more often than opened. A flickering lantern swings above it, offering neither light nor comfort, but at least it hasn't fallen off yet. Progress. You approach the door. There's a puddle on the step. It smells like someone tried to wash blood away with ale. Your hand reaches for the iron ring handle, and as you pull, the door groans open like an old man reluctantly getting out of bed. Warm air hits your face. It smells like stew, wood smoke, and several varieties of sweat. The good kind. The lived-in kind. You've arrived, and no one cares. You take a cautious step inside, and immediately the floor tries to assassinate you. It's not a floor, not really. More like a damp patchwork of dirt, rushes, spilled drink, and whatever fell off someone's dinner. Or someone's person. It gives slightly underfoot, like it's thinking about swallowing you whole. You steady yourself, pretending this is fine. Normal, it's not. Your boots squelch with each step. No one looks up. This, in some ways, is comforting. You're not important enough to notice. You're not a knight returning from glory. You're not even a regular. You're a stranger, and strangers in this place fall into two categories: curiosity or threat. The fact that no one reacts tells you all you need to know. You're beneath a suspicion. You have no threat left in you. You look like someone who's already lost everything worth stealing. Your cloak drips on the floor. It's the only cloak you have. It smells like sheep and rain and whatever the soup was back in the last village. You're not sure if that's better or worse than the smell in here, which is its own unique blend of stale ale, unwashed bodies, burning fat, wet wood, and something vaguely like feet. Not one foot, just feet, collectively, as a concept. You glance around. The lighting is dim. Just a few candles and a low burning hearth doing their best to fight the darkness. Shadows loom large on the walls, dancing with every flicker, turning coat racks into giants and chairs into crouching beasts. The room is crowded but not packed, just full enough that you don't feel alone, and not so full that you will be noticed sneaking out if things get weird, which they will. They always do. You stand near the doorway a moment too long, and the tavern door, now behind you, slams shut with the weight of a drunken god. The sound echoes like a warning. A few heads turn your way. Eyes squint. A man with a scar across his nose sizes you up with all the friendliness of a tax collector. A woman in the corner tilts her head like she's wondering whether you're worth robbing or ignoring. A dog growls. Again, you do not make sudden moves. You move quickly now, nodding awkwardly to no one in particular, pretending you belong. This is a delicate performance. Walk too confidently and someone will test you. Walk too meekly and someone will pity you. And then test you. There's a fine art to moving like you've been here before, even when your gut says otherwise. You find a bench near the wall. It is empty, suspiciously empty. You understand immediately why. It's slick with something. Possibly beer, possibly blood, possibly stew, possibly all three. You sit anyway, careful to avoid the puddle. You place your cloak beside you, which is generous, because that bench will now permanently smell like you. A server passes by. She's carrying a mug in each hand and balancing a third on her head. You open your mouth to speak, and she stops dead in her tracks, raises one eyebrow and says flatly, "Pay first?" Then she's gone. A man with no teeth laughs nearby like this was the best joke he's heard all week. It might have been. You're not sure how much coin you have left. You reach down to check your pouch discreetly, but discreet is hard when your fingers are numb, and the pouch is tied with what appears to be horsehair. You count silently. 1, 2, and a button. Not just any button. A shiny one. Could pass for silver in the right light, if no one looks closely and you talk fast. You consider trading it for ale. Then you remember the stew from earlier, the colour, the texture, the way it moved, your weight. From your bench you begin to watch. That's all you can do now. Blend in. Observe. To your right, a man is having a passionate argument with a chair. To your left, someone is asleep in a bowl of something that might once have been soup. Across the room, a bard tunes his lute, badly. Each note is a threat to your inner peace. You suspect he's tuning it to the key of leave. Then you see her, the tavern keeper. Not the barmaid, not the server, the keeper. She stands behind what might be considered a bar, if one is feeling generous. It's a plank of wood balanced on barrels, sagging in the middle under the weight of mugs, elbows and forgotten promises. Her arms are crossed, her eyes narrow. She does not move like someone who serves food and drink. She moves like someone who has buried people behind this building and would do it again. You decide, immediately and wisely, not to make eye contact. Still, you can't help but study her for a moment. She controls the room like gravity. When she speaks, the volume dips. When she glares, men stop mid-sentence and pretend to find their drinks fascinating. A man nearby sneezes. She doesn't flinch. The entire table around him recoils like he's cast a curse. You hold your breath, just in case. Someone bumps into you. A jug sloshes. You smell onions and something stronger. You don't turn around. Apologies aren't currency here. Neither is confrontation. The correct response is no response. The drinker moves on. You remain still. This is survival. You are not a hero here. You are a body in a seat. A filler of space. A background character in everyone else's story. And tonight, that might just be enough. You're not from here. That much is obvious. From the way you avoid the uneven floorboards that everyone else steps over instinctively, to the fact that you just sat in what appears to be the unofficial spitting corner. You're a foreigner, even if you're only born 3 villages away. In a town this size, not local might as well mean enemy until proven broke. Still, you try to pretend. You keep your hands folded. You angle your body slightly toward the hearth, where the smoke is thickest. The scent of burning peat and mystery meat hides your clothes' less noble aromas. You think if you sit still long enough, maybe no one will ask questions. Maybe no one will try to sell you something, or accuse you of something, or flirt with you in a way that feels like a setup for a pickpocketing. You are not important. You are not useful. You're not a craftsman, not a merchant, not a noble's retainer, or even a convincing liar. You're the kind of traveller that towns forget by sunrise, but you've got a past, even if it's soggy and stitched together with bad luck. Maybe you once worked in a stable, brushing mud off the feet of horses that got more food than you. Maybe you were apprenticed to a blacksmith, until you found out you were allergic to both iron and authority. Maybe you tried your hand at farming until a hailstorm, a plague, and your cousin's terrible judgment with a torch all happened in the same week. Maybe, and this seems most likely, you've spent your life moving just fast enough to avoid trouble and just slow enough to never get ahead of it. But here's the thing. No one in this tavern cares. Everyone here has a story, and all of them are worse than yours, or better told. That's the real economy here. Stories. Who has one? Who believes it? And how drunk everyone needs to be before facts stop mattering. You look around and try to pick the safest kind of company. There's a group of farmers near the fireplace, their skin red from sun and drink. They're arguing about pigs. One of them has a live chicken tucked under his arm like it's a handbag. You decide, not them. There's a man at the far end of the room with a hood pulled low. He hasn't moved since you entered. His drink hasn't moved either. Dangerous, or asleep. Either way, no. A pair of older women laugh at a shared joke, one of them pounding the table so hard her mug bounces. Their laughter is sharp and dangerous, like they've buried at least 2 husbands apiece, and have opinions about your posture. You consider joining them, but you're not that brave, so you stay where you are, alone, forgettable, low risk. And in this place, being low risk is the closest thing to a compliment. Someone calls out in the local dialect, thick and muddy like the river that feeds this town. You catch half a word. Something about debts, something about stew, something about that time with the ferret. You pretend not to hear. It's not your story. You're just the listener tonight. The door creaks again. Another traveller? Or maybe just someone returning from the outhouse? Or wherever people go when they need to scream into the night for a moment before facing this room again. They enter with a huff, shrug off a cloak, soaked in sorrow, and move toward the bar with the confidence of someone who either belongs or wants to fight someone who says otherwise. You're neither of those things. You belong to a quieter class. The watchers, the drifters. The ones who sit with their backs to the wall and their coin close to their belt. Not because you're clever, but because you've learned, one bruise at a time, that this is how you make it through the night in places like this. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't drink unless you can smell it first. You don't flirt unless you're ready to run. And you don't ask the bard to play anything specific unless you want to hear the same story for the next 4 hours, because he only knows one melody and it's about a goose. You settle in. A barmaid passes, tossing a scrap of bread onto your table without a glance. It's hard, slightly warm, and smells faintly like someone once stored it with onions. You eat it anyway. It tastes like survival. You chew slowly. Bread like this doesn't spoil. It simply develops a more aggressive personality over time. You lean back, gently. The bench shifts like it's considering a collapse. You pause. It decides to stay upright. A small win. Around you, life continues. Someone toasts something in a language you don't recognise. A mug shatters. Laughter follows. Someone hiccups so violently they nearly fall backward into the hearth. No one offers help. They don't need it. They bounce, grumble, and prop themselves against the wall like it was always part of the plan. You watch, and the strange comfort of anonymity settles around you like a thin wool blanket. Scratchy, slightly damp, but warmer than nothing. You're a nobody. A background figure in a room of louder, larger, drunker stories. And in this place tonight, that makes you exactly where you're meant to be. Time passes strangely inside the tavern. There's no clock, no bell to mark the hours, only the slow tilting of shadows across the soot-streaked walls and the rising tide of slurred conversation. Time is measured here by empty mugs, new bruises, and the exact moment someone starts dancing on a table. That hasn't happened yet, but you can feel the possibility circling. You're still on your bench, still watching. The cloak beside you has absorbed something. It's heavier now, wetter, and might be fermenting. You shift slightly away from it and try not to think about it. Your back aches from the weight of the road. Your shoulders carry miles. Your feet have blistered in the same spot so many times they've developed personalities. You name one of them Bernard. Bernard is unhappy. He voices this in sharp, rhythmic throbs. You haven't spoken since you entered. No one's asked you to, and that's fine. Talking is a luxury. Listening now, that's survival. And you're listening. You hear it in the voices, the hierarchy, the rhythms, the pecking order of this social ecosystem. The tavern isn't just a place, it's a living thing. And you're sitting inside its stomach, trying not to be digested. The regulars sit closest to the hearth. Of course they do. Warmth is earned here, claimed, paid for not with coin, but with presence. These are the ones who know the barkeep's real name, the ones who can say the usual and be served something hot and only mildly questionable. They lean into one another, trading stories like currency. Every tale is exaggerated, every punchline louder than the last. One man claims he once wrestled a bear. His friend corrects him. It was a pig. Another insists he saw a ghost just last week. The barmaid rolls her eyes so hard you hear it. Near the door sit the hopefuls, the outliers, the too new to be known. That's you. Along with the caravan guards between jobs, the pilgrims off course, the gamblers down on luck. You can spot them by the way they scan the room too often, by the way they nurse their drinks like they're saving the last drop for breakfast. Then there are the true outsiders, further back, near the darkest corners. The ones who don't drink, who don't talk, who wear hoods even indoors and never take off their gloves. Mercenaries maybe, or criminals, or just very cold. Hard to tell. You avoid staring. The tavern's unwritten laws are clearer now. You know how not to stand. You know not to ask for anything sweet. You know that the small door in the back is not a place to wander into, no matter how curious you are or how urgently you need to relieve yourself. Your face is a mask of polite detachment. That's important. The wrong look can start a fight. A smile can be mistaken for mockery. Eye contact might be interpreted as an invitation to talk, to fight, to marry someone's cousin who's very strong and doesn't like jokes. So you keep your gaze soft, indifferent, present but disengaged. A loud crash interrupts your thoughts. A bench tips. A man goes down hard, groaning. Everyone looks over, then quickly away. He's not dead. Not interesting. The tavern moves on without him. He stays on the floor a while, cradling his mug, like it's his last connection to the mortal plane. You understand him. Someone sets down a tray near you. A bowl of something greyish, steaming, viscous. It sloshes like it's thinking about becoming soup, but hasn't quite committed. You didn't order it. You're not even sure you're expected to pay for it, but it's there now. A challenge, a dare. You dip your spoon in, lift a small amount, and sniff. It smells like barley, root vegetables, and exhaustion. You eat. It's bland, too hot and lumpy. It's also the best thing you've tasted all week. Hunger lowers the bar dramatically. This tastes like not dying. You eat faster. As the heat reaches your core, something inside you relaxes just slightly. Not comfort, not yet, but the beginning of it. Your shoulders sink a little. Your fingers stop twitching from the cold. You begin to feel the ache behind your eyes, the tiredness you've been keeping at bay through sheer paranoia. For a moment, you consider sleep, but not here. Not yet. The room still has too much motion, too much laughter, too much chance that something sharp will be thrown in your general direction. No, for now, you stay alert. But beneath that alertness is something new. You're still an outsider. Still nameless. Still damp and sore and precariously perched between anonymity and accidental conflict. But you're no longer outside, and in a medieval tavern, that's enough. You exist now, within the ecosystem. Unnoticed, perhaps. Unimportant. But here, part of the ambient soundscape. Another breathing figure in a room full of voices. You raise your spoon again, and it no longer trembles in your grip. You're still nobody, but you're nobody in here. You've been in the tavern long enough now that people are beginning to notice you. Not because you've done anything remarkable, but because you haven't done anything at all. In a room built on noise, silence draws attention. Stillness too. You've spoken to no one. You haven't laughed, shouted, bargained, or flirted. You haven't tried to sell anything, or demand a drink that doesn't look like melted wood. That makes people curious. What kind of person walks into a place like this and doesn't immediately try to prove they belong? The assumptions start quietly. Someone mutters, "You're a tax collector." Someone else laughs, too poor for that. Maybe a spy? Someone whispers. "No," says another, "just dumb." No one that quiet is smart. "A farmer gone wrong," says a third, with the certainty of someone who's always wrong. You sit still and let their stories build around you like mist. It's safer that way. If people think they know who you are, they stop trying to find out. To the man with a limp and 2 dogs under his bench, you're a lost courier. To the barmaid, you're a waste of a seat unless you order more. To the bard, you're a potential plot point in his next rambling song. You'll be the mysterious stranger, or the victim of a punchline, depending on how well he tunes his lute. Someone calls you cloak, someone else says mushroom face. You don't correct them. Let them write the script. Let them cast you however they like. You'll play the part. Quiet. Nondescript. Unassuming. It's not a role of glory, but it's a survivable one. In a tavern like this, attention is a coin that spends too easily. If you're noticed, you're dragged into something. A story, a joke, a brawl, a debt. Better to let the room blur past you like rain on a carriage window. You're not here to be known. You're here to rest, to watch, to wait out the worst of the cold, to find a place where no one expects anything from you. The spoon scrapes your bowl. You don't remember finishing the stew. It's gone anyway. Some part of you misses it. Another part warns you not to think too hard about what it might have been made of. That part is wise. You listen to it. Your fingers begin to thaw. Your shoulders stop clenching with every nearby shout. You realise you're breathing slower now. Your bench creaks as you shift your weight. A man across the room glances over, then away. He's already rewritten you in his head. You're just part of the furniture now. Another body in the margins of his night. The performance is working. Someone drops a mug. It doesn't break. There's a moment of disappointment, then laughter, then shouting, then singing. The room keeps living, growing louder, messier, more tangled in its own rituals. A woman throws a crust of bread at someone's head. A man challenges a dog to a staring contest. A stranger hugs a barrel and calls it mother. You're still here, still unnoticed. And in a place like this, that's as close to safety as you'll get. You let your eyes drift. The walls are coated in soot and history. Carvings from bored hands, initials long forgotten. The kind of marks that say, I was here, even when no one remembers the name. You wonder what mark you'll leave. Or if you'll leave one at all. Probably not. But then again, maybe one day someone will sit at this same bench, find the initials someone carved here, and wonder who C was, and why their E looks like it was carved with a spoon. You smile. Just barely. No one notices. The fire pops in the hearth. Someone sings off-key. Another round is shouted across the room. You're small, cold, sore, and mostly invisible. But you are here. And that, for tonight, is enough. It starts with your feet. You've been sitting still too long, and now your toes have begun to rebel. Not with sharp pain, nothing that noble. Just that dull, creeping kind of ache that feels like your bones are turning into wet rope. Your boots, once the pride of a market purchase 3 towns back, have become hostile environments. They're soaked, of course. Not just damp, but spiritually wet. The kind of wet that lives in the stitching, in the soul of the leather. The kind of wet that makes you wonder if mildew can become sentient. You try to flex your foot. A squelch answers you. You do not try again. The rest of your clothes are not better. Your tunic is wool. Not the soft kind spun by loving hands in a sunlit cottage. This is the kind of wool that scratches your soul. It itches in places you didn't know had nerve endings. It clings, even though it's loose. It smells like the sheep it once came from, and the journey it's been on since. Your underlayer, a linen shirt you've washed once and regretted, is clinging to your ribs like a second skin made of regret. You wore it 3 days in a row, not because you wanted to, but because the alternative was no shirt at all. And Winter has opinions about that. Your trousers are thick, heavy, brown, though they were once green, you think? Maybe. They've been patched at the knees with something not quite matching, which somehow draws more attention. They were stitched by someone who believes strongly in durability, less so in symmetry. The legs are uneven. One always rides up when you sit. You've given up fixing it. At least it hides your socks, which no longer deserve the name. Your belt is a miracle of persistence. It's held together with twine, a bit of copper wire, and sheer stubbornness. You've tied and retied it so many times that it's no longer a tool, it's a negotiation. Every morning you bargain with it. Just hold on for one more day. Every evening you thank it like a companion who didn't abandon you in the mud. And then there's your cloak. Oh, the cloak. A second-hand, bought from a man who insisted it once belonged to a retired knight. You suspect it belonged to a scarecrow. It drapes over your shoulders like a wet towel with dreams of grandeur. It smells like moss, onions, and loneliness. It doesn't repel rain so much as absorb it, and pass it lovingly along to your inner layers. Still, you wear it because wind exists. And the wind in this part of the world is personal. It sneaks between buttons. It tucks itself into your collar and whispers cold poetry down your spine. It has no mercy, no logic. It's not the kind of wind that carries scents of flowers and spring. It carries smoke and ash, and the faint aroma of something burning that probably shouldn't be. And that's just what you're wearing. The world around you is no kinder. The tavern may offer warmth, but it's a treacherous sort. The hearth only heats the 3 feet in front of it. Beyond that, the air is cold enough to make your breath visible. You can see it now, puffing softly into the smoky air like your lungs are sending up surrender flags. The walls are stone and wood, thick, uneven, and full of drafts. Someone stuffed straw in the cracks long ago. The straw now smells like ale and betrayal. It does nothing to keep the cold out, but it's tradition, so it stays. The floor is dirt pretending to be something more. A few rushes scattered around to soak up spills and shame. They do neither. You step carefully because some patches have absorbed more than drink. Step wrong, and your boot sinks in with a squish you feel in your molars. The ceiling is low. If you stand too quickly, you'll meet a beam with your forehead. It's happened twice already tonight, once to a man who apologised to the beam. The beam did not forgive. And the smell, oh the smell, it's not a single scent, but a tapestry. Layer 1, smoke, from the hearth, from the candles, from someone who seems to be burning something behind the tavern for reasons you don't want to know. Layer 2, sweat. Human, horse, possibly pig. It's aged, complex. Like a wine that's gone off but insists it's still good. Layer 3, ale. Spilled, staled, fermented in mugs and mouths and carpet fibres that have long since rotted away. Layer 4, stew, not the fresh kind. The kind that has simmered since Tuesday and picked up the personalities of every vegetable and protein that's wandered into it. Layer 5, feet. You don't know whose, possibly yours, possibly the collective unconscious of feet from history. You breathe through your mouth. It doesn't help. But eventually your senses dull. The smell becomes background. The cold becomes expected. The itch of your shirt fades into the rhythm of your heartbeat. You adjust, not because it gets better, but because you know it never will. And that's the truth of this place. Comfort is not an option, just a shifting of burdens. You don't get warm, you get used to the cold. You don't get clean, you get used to the dirt. You don't sleep well, you sleep enough to keep going. This isn't luxury. This isn't even roughing it. This is life. A medieval life, where your body is a thing to be endured, and the world offers no apology for its weight. Somewhere above you, someone is snoring. Not the polite kind of snore either. Not the gentle rhythmic puff of a tired uncle in a rocking chair. No, this is the full body, mouth hanging open, soul trying to escape kind of snore. It vibrates through the beams of the building, like a dying bear trying to sing. You're not sure if it's coming from the rafters, the floorboards, or beneath your bench. It doesn't matter. It's part of the soundtrack now. Someone else coughs, wetly. The sort of cough that sounds like it's been aging in a wine barrel. No one reacts. Not even the man who coughed. He just sways slightly and continues his conversation with a bowl of pottage. This is the ambient life of the tavern. An unholy symphony of lungs, floorboards, spoons, and the occasional fart that rises like a prayer to the rafters. And you're still here, not resting, just paused. You'd love to lie down, wouldn't you? To stretch out your back, straighten your legs, close your eyes and pretend your body isn't made of damp rope and regret. But there's nowhere to go. Not unless you pay. And even then, lodging in this tavern is a suggestion, not a service. Upstairs there are rooms. Technically, there are less rooms and more spaces where gravity and wood collide. The walls are thin, the floorboards thinner, and the bedding is a sack of straw that's seen more action than you have this year. Privacy doesn't exist here. If you're lucky, your fellow lodgers are merely drunk. If you're not, they're sick, or looking for company, or unaware that people aren't supposed to sleep with knives drawn. And if you don't have coin for the upstairs, well, welcome to the ground floor. You sleep where you can, in a corner, under a table, curled up by the hearth like a feral cat. If you're lucky, someone tosses you an old cloak or a seat cushion. If you're unlucky, someone steps on your leg mid-argument and breaks 2 of your toes. Either way, you don't complain. Complaints get you noticed. Noticed gets you moved. Or removed. So you stay sitting, leaning against the wall, hoping your body can trick itself into believing this is rest. Your spine has questions. Your neck has regrets. Your knees haven't fully forgiven you for that fall in the mud 3 days ago. You still limp slightly. No one noticed, no one cared, and yet there is something almost comforting about it. Not because it's good, but because everyone else is suffering too. You're not alone in the discomfort. Every face in the room has the same look. Exhaustion. Not the delicate kind you see in poems. This is the rough, stained, deeply physical kind. The kind where rest isn't about sleep. It's about not moving. It's about holding still long enough for your joints to stop arguing. You see it in the old man nursing a cup of something so bitter it's making his eyes water, but he keeps sipping because it's warm. You see it in the serving girl whose shoes are just rags tied to her feet, her ankles wrapped in twine. You see it in the bard, whose fingers are bleeding slightly from a broken lute string, but he's still playing. Because if he stops, he doesn't eat. That's the rule here. Move or starve. Work or be replaced. Endure or vanish. Comfort is a foreign word. Maybe it once existed, somewhere behind stone castle walls, where nobles sip warm milk and complain about the draught in their silk-lined bedchambers. But not here. Here the body is a burden, an aching, filthy, half-frozen sack of problems that you carry like a curse. You don't groom it. You don't pamper it. You just keep it alive. Most of the people in this tavern haven't bathed in weeks. You haven't either. There are baths, of course. Communal ones. Expensive ones. Ones where you pay to sit in a wooden tub while someone pours hot water over your shoulders and pretends not to notice the fleas. But you don't have that kind of money. So you wash in the river when the ice breaks, when no one's watching, when the wind is calm and you think, just maybe, you can scrub the worst off without losing a toe. You know, your skin smells. Everyone's does. You mask it with smoke, with onion, with hope. And the tavern? It accepts you anyway. Because here, no one expects better. Here, your stink is just another form of clothing. Your rough hands, your chapped lips, your blistered heels. These are your credentials. They say, I've made it this far, and in this world that means everything. You can't remember the last time you felt clean. Not just surface clean, not splash water on your face clean, but the kind of clean that feels like you've been peeled from your own grime and handed a new skin. That kind of clean is fiction now. A bedtime story for nobles. You've redefined cleanliness as not actively sticky. Your fingernails are black around the edges. You've scraped them against wood, soil, frost, and something you'd rather not identify that coated the bottom of your borrowed bowl. You rub them now against your trousers, just enough to dislodge the worst of it. You stop when you realise that you're rubbing dirt into more dirt. Your hands are cracked, not painfully, just endlessly. Your knuckles are red with windburn. Your palms are stiff, calloused from doing work you don't even remember anymore. There's a scar across your thumb you didn't notice until 2 nights ago. It's healing without your permission. You stretch your legs out beneath the bench, and both knees protest like old doors in a storm. You're not old, not really, but medieval years are longer, heavier, lived from the waist down. Every mile walked, every barrel lifted, every stone stepped on barefoot. They add up. The world pulls at you from below. You're sinking, slowly, into the mud, into the floor, into yourself. Your teeth ache. You don't know why. They just do. One of them might be cracked, or loose, or harbouring a colony of some tiny invader with a grudge. You chew on the opposite side, carefully. Food isn't soft. It's chewable only through force of will. The bread here isn't bread. It's a training weapon. It comes in chunks that can knock out small animals. You dunk it in stew to soften it, but the stew is often just hot salt and disappointment. Still, it's food. You eat it. You pretend the crunch is intentional, that the grit is just local seasoning. You try not to think about the time you bit down and heard something snap. Maybe it was the bread. Maybe it was you. Your stomach grumbles again. Always grumbling, never full. You eat enough to live. That's the goal. Fullness is suspicious. Fullness means someone over-prepared. Means someone's not coming back for their share. Water is rare, not because it's hard to find, but because it's unsafe. You never drink it straight unless you see the well yourself. Unless you smell it. Unless you trust the source. And you don't. Not anymore. Boil it, they say. As if firewood grows on tavern walls, so you drink ale, warm, cloudy, heavy with floaters. You pretend not to see them. You drink cider. Sour, sharp. Fermented from apples that hit the ground hard and never got back up. You drink mead, too sweet. Burns your throat. Hit your skull with a hammer after 3 gulps. You drink because it's safer than thirst. You drink because everyone else does. You drink because your body has learned to prefer a mild buzz to the memory of what healthy ever felt like. Your skin, once something you noticed, has become background noise. It flakes in winter. It burns in summer. You wear it like a reluctant armour, protective only in patches. Your shoulders itch constantly, but you don't scratch. Scratching leads to tearing. Tearing leads to infections. And you've seen what happens to infected wounds when the nearest physician recommends prayer and garlic. No, thank you. You've grown used to the itch. You've grown used to everything. And the smell, the cold, the creaking of your own joints. At some point, maybe today, maybe last month, you stopped resisting. You accepted that your body is not a temple. It's a barn, a lean-to, a drafty hut in a windstorm. And like all poorly built shelters, it leaks. And yet, somehow it holds. Somehow it keeps going. You eat, you drink, you sit. You shift your weight to the side and find a slightly less painful angle to lean. You stare at the warped grain of the wood in front of you and begin to recognise the patterns. You count the notches. 1, 2, 12. Someone carved initials here. A heart. A stick figure with what might be a hat. You wonder if they were cold too, if they were tired, if they sat here like you, waiting for the numbness to set in. Your eyes sting. Not with tears. Just with smoke. You blink slowly. You rub your face with a sleeve that smells like salt and onion. You are tired, but not defeated. Not yet. Your eyelids are heavy now. Not the romantic kind of heavy. Not the drifting off with a book by firelight kind. This is the heavy of bones collapsing into themselves. Of muscles slowly turning to stone. You are tired in the way that makes your spine feel like it's melting, inch by inch, down through the bench and into the floor. And yet, sleep won't come. Because sleep, here, is a risk. You don't doze in a medieval tavern unless you've earned the right, or lost the will. Both come with consequences. The hearth crackles across the room, throwing lazy sparks into the air. Its warmth doesn't reach you, but you pretend it does. You tilt your body slightly toward it, like maybe the heat will notice and wander over. It won't. The hearth is selfish, so are the people closest to it. Closest too. They curl into its glow like cats with mugs, pushing strangers aside with pointed elbows and casual disdain. You could sleep, maybe, if you leaned forward onto the table. Let your head rest on your folded arms. Let the noise become a lullaby. But then someone might mistake you for dead, or drunk, or both. You might wake up without your belt, or your boots, or your teeth. So you sit upright. You keep your eyes low. You allow yourself to blink slower. Just that. Just slow blinking. Every few moments your vision swims. The room wobbles gently as if the walls themselves are tipsy. You breathe in, sharp, cold, thick with smoke and the distant rot of spilled ale. It helps, a little. You remain conscious, just barely. Someone nearby is already asleep. You can hear it. Not just the snoring, but the stillness. That strange, heavy silence of a person whose body has abandoned performance. They've slumped into themselves. Mouth open, chin tucked, a mug still clutched like it might protect them. No one bothers him. yet, but someone will. They always do. Someone will shake him, check his purse, maybe draw something rude on his face with soot. Maybe he won't notice. Maybe he'll wake up swinging. Maybe he'll wake up alone and missing something vital. That's the risk. Sleep here is not comfort. It's surrender. You remember sleeping outdoors, on the road, wrapped in your cloak, curled against a tree root. You remember the wind, the cold that slithered through your clothing like it had fingers, the way every sound felt personal, the hoot of an owl, the snap of a twig, the long, thoughtful silence before dawn. Even that was safer than this. At least in the forest, you knew who your enemies were. Here, in this tavern, your enemy is proximity. It's closeness. Shared air. Shared heat. Shared disease. The man 3 tables down has been coughing into his hands since you arrived. The woman behind you is rubbing her shoulder in a way that suggests lice. The child asleep under the table near the fire hasn't blinked in half an hour, and you're not entirely sure he's not a ghost. You'd move if there were anywhere better to go, but there isn't. This bench is yours. Claimed by your body. Your damp, aching, increasingly numb body. So you stay, you shift, gently. You lean back, just enough to give your spine a break. You tilt your head sideways. Let one cheek rest against the cold wood. It's not comfortable, but it's different. And sometimes different is enough. You stare across the room. The tavern breathes. The patrons rise and fall in waves of movement. Laughter. Clinks. Slaps. Arguments muffled by stew. The bard strums again. His 5th attempt to play something resembling a tune. It sounds like a goat stepped on a harp. No one complains. They just drink louder. The light grows softer. The candles dim one by one as they exhaust themselves. You watch one melt, the wax dripping slowly onto the table like time giving up. You imagine lying down on the floor. You imagine curling up in the straw like a dog. You imagine someone stepping on your fingers by accident, or on purpose. You blink. You're still upright. Still here. Still watching the candle burn down, like a prayer running out of words. Sleep will come, eventually. Maybe in this chair. Maybe with your head against the wall. Maybe with one eye open. You don't get to choose. Your body will decide when it's done pretending to be awake. And when it does, you'll sleep the way everything sleeps here. Hard, cold, and very, very briefly. Your body doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the season, to the hour, to the road you walked here, to the bench you're sitting on, to the bread you ate and the splinter in your palm and the ache that lives behind your eyes like a tenant who never pays rent. You've stopped hoping for comfort. Now you hope for something simpler. Dryness, warmth, a moment without pain, a full breath of air that doesn't carry soot or sweat or someone else's breath in it. That's all you ask. You lower your hand to your side. Your fingers brush against your belt. Check the pouch, reflexively. Still there. Still mostly empty. A button, 2 coins. Something that might be a pebble or a very old bean. Your fingers are so cold you can barely feel them. You shove them under your arms. It helps. Briefly. You used to think of warmth as something pleasant, a luxury. Now you think of it like firewood, something to ration. When the sun's out, you bask like a lizard. When the hearth glows, you sidle closer like a parasite. When you walk fast. Not to get anywhere, but just to feel the blood move. You haven't felt warm all the way through in weeks, maybe longer. Your ears are always cold. So are your fingertips, your toes, and that weird patch between your shoulder blades. You layer your clothes, but layering damp cloth just makes you heavier, like carrying your own wet grave around all day. You used to feel embarrassment about smell. You remember those days? Fresh from a bath, hair brushed, shirt only mildly stained. You'd wrinkle your nose at the scent of someone nearby. Judge them. Think, how can they live like that? Now you know. You live like that because there's no alternative. Soap is rare, hot water rarer, and nobody's carrying lemon peel and lavender sachets in their boots anymore. You'd wear a flower crown if it meant covering up the smell, but flowers don't grow in frozen mud and desperation. Your body has adapted. It stopped sending signals, stopped asking for rest, or comfort, or even food that tastes like anything other than boiled defeat. You've reached a level of survival where sensation is the enemy. Pain means awareness, and awareness means noticing just how broken you are. Your shoulders have learned to stay hunched, your jaw to stay tight, your knees to remain slightly bent when walking on stone floors because you've fallen before, and you remember the bruises like old friends. You don't notice hunger anymore unless it's severe. You don't feel the weight of your boots unless you remove them. You don't react to cuts unless they sting. You've become your own draft horse, uncomplaining, muddied, pulling your body through time one tired step at a time. And still, you keep going. Because that's the cruel magic of the body. It endures, it creaks, it cracks, it limps, but it endures. And endurance here is everything. Nobody cares if you're uncomfortable. They are too. Nobody asks if you slept last night. Nobody asks if you hurt. They assume you do. Pain is the air you breathe, a common denominator. A shared language made of winces, coughs, limps, and muttered curses. It's the creak in a barmaid's back as she carries yet another overfilled tray. It's the grunt from a farmer who bends too far to pick up a dropped spoon. It's the pause between notes in the bard's song as his fingers seize and his voice cracks. And it's you, sitting in this corner, back stiff, eyes gritty, every joint popping when you shift, but not stopping, not leaving, not lying down. Because that's not what people do here. Here, you stay vertical until your body stops letting you. Then you fold up like a broken chair. You fall asleep mid-sentence, mid-chew, mid-step. And when you wake, you do it all again. Because that's what survival looks like when you've forgotten what comfort ever was. You're not unemployed. You're under-owned by multiple bad decisions and one possibly cursed pitchfork. The day begins early, before the sky remembers what light looks like, before the tavern empties out, before the barmaid scrapes the floor with a broom made of twigs tied to wishful thinking. You don't sleep well, but you sleep, curled like a question mark against a bench leg, your neck stiff, your fingers twitching from a dream about bread that didn't crumble like sand. You wake when someone steps over you, or on you. There's no real difference anymore. You stretch, or try to. Your joints disagree, loudly. One of your knees is still recovering from that cobblestone you slipped on. The other is bitter about how long you made it walk yesterday without a break. Your spine feels like it's been folded and left in a damp drawer. You roll your shoulders, spit the taste of someone else's cough out of your mouth, and rise. There is no breakfast waiting. There's no fire to gather around, no table of options. There is work, and work waits for no one. You're not hired exactly. You're tolerated. Part of the crowd of figures who show up each morning to loiter near carts, wagons, gates and market stalls, hoping someone says, "You there," with a finger pointed your way in a task they don't want to do themselves. Today, you're lucky. If luck is the word for being chosen to carry buckets of something heavy and unidentifiable from the back of the tavern to a trough near the pig pens. The buckets leak. One has a handle made from repurposed string. The other smells like fish and possibly fear. You carry them anyway, because the man who handed them to you has a scar that tells stories and a knife that ends them. Your shoulders scream. Not literally, but almost. Each step is a reminder that your body was never meant for this. That your arms are too thin, your back too crooked, your palms too soft in the wrong places and too calloused in the rest. The mud sucks at your boots like it's trying to steal them. It almost succeeds. You drag one foot free with a slurp that echoes louder than you'd like. You reach the trough. Dump the contents. Try not to breathe through your nose. Return. Repeat. This takes all morning. You're paid in soup. Not fresh. Not warm. Just soup. In name only. You drink it because it's calories. And calories are life. Afternoon arrives like an accusation. Not that you can tell the time in any meaningful way. There are no clocks here, just a vague change in light and the slow shift from cold dampness to slightly brighter cold dampness. Your hands are shaking now, not from fear or sickness, but from the exertion of carrying the buckets. Your reward for finishing the first task was simple. You got noticed. This is not always good. A woman with arms like tree trunks and a voice that could crack stone tells you you're needed in the field. You try to ask what field, but she's already walking away, and you have no choice but to follow. You walk for 20 minutes down a muddy path where chickens outnumber people. The village thins. Fences become suggestion lines made of rope and old planks. You pass a boy attempting to climb a cow. The cow seems resigned to this. Eventually, you arrive at a plot of land that might generously be called farmland. It looks more like a battlefield for carrots and weeds. The woman hands you a hoe, not new, not clean. The wood is splintering, the blade rusted. She points at the ground and says, "Dig. You dig. You're not told why. You're not told how far. You're not told how long. You just dig, and the earth resists. It's not soft loam. It's not warm, fertile dirt. It's a hardened mix of mud, rock, roots, and the occasional piece of buried pottery or bone. Not human bone, probably. You don't ask. Your hands blister within minutes. Your back starts to ache, then burn, then scream. You shift your stance. You switch arms. You stretch between rows. It doesn't help. You're not built for this. You're built for... well, you don't know anymore. Not for this. But this is what you're doing. A man nearby coughs so hard, he drops his tool. No one helps him. He doesn't expect them to. He picks it up again, keeps digging. This is the rhythm of labour. You do, because not doing is worse. You dig, because if you stop, you'll be replaced. You dig because work means food. Sometimes. Sometimes it just means less yelling. Midday, if you can call it that. The sun tries to break through the clouds and fails. It's a grey light, a tired light, but it's enough to see your breath when you exhale. Someone calls a break. You sit on a rock. Not a bench, not a stool, just a rock. It's hard and cold and shaped like it resents being sat on. You sit anyway. You're given a crust of bread and something that might have once been cheese. It's hard enough to defend itself. You eat both without tasting them. Nearby, 2 workers argue about the best way to trap rats. One suggests garlic. The other swears by poetry. You nod like you're part of the conversation, but you're not. You're saving your voice. You'll need it if anyone asks you to carry something heavy again. The break ends. There's more work. There's always more work. The woman with the strong arms gives you a new task. Clear the ditch. You don't know what that means until you see the ditch. It's not so much a ditch as it is a depression in the earth filled with water, silt, and the remnants of something that used to have feathers. You're handed a shovel, or what's left of one. You climb in. The water soaks your boots instantly. Then your socks. Then your soul. You dig anyway. You toss mud behind you in great heaving piles. Most of it slides back in. You do it again. Your legs are numb within minutes. A frog hops across your foot. You let it. Someone passes by and says something sarcastic. You pretend you didn't hear. By the time the ditch is cleared, which means slightly less horrible, you can't feel your knees. Your arms feel like they're being chewed on. Your back is a series of twitches and threats. You climb out. You slip. You fall back in. Someone laughs. You laugh too, just to survive it. You trudge back to the tavern in silence. No one talks after a workday like this. Not out of misery. Out of habit. The body is tired. The mind is soft. Words are luxury. Inside, the tavern is warmish. No one greets you. No one acknowledges the mud on your legs or the smell rising from your boots. You sit back on the bench you occupied this morning. It remembers you. It's still uncomfortable. Someone puts a bowl in front of you. You don't ask what it is. You eat. Because that's the cycle. Wake, work, hurt, eat, sleep if you're lucky, then wake again. The next day is the same. Of course it is. There are no weekends here, no holy respite. The closest you come to rest is when someone else is picked to do the worst job instead of you. You rise early again, but only because someone near you is vomiting. You try not to breathe until they're done. The stench hangs in the air like judgment. You push yourself upright, legs heavy, mouth dry, back still half asleep. You stretch carefully, like someone in negotiations with their own joints. You lost a sock overnight. You don't ask how or where. You find your boots, damp again, not from rain, just tavern moisture, a humidity that lives in the woods and seeps into cloth like a ghost with poor boundaries. You put them on anyway. You check your belt, your pouch, still there, still sad. You step outside. The mud greets you like an old friend, one that wants to ruin your life. Work today is hauling stones. You weren't asked. Someone just handed you a sled made of boards tied together with rope and pointed to a pile of rocks that need to be moved from there to over there. No further explanation. The rocks aren't uniform. They're jagged, angry, possibly cursed. The sled doesn't slide, it drags, bumping and catching on every root, every divot in the earth, every puddle filled with surprise frost. You do the job anyway. Because you said nothing. And saying nothing is the same as agreeing. You load each rock by hand. 1, 2, 7. Your knuckles are raw. Your fingers split. Your palms tear open in slow motion. You hauled a sled across the yard like a condemned cart horse. Halfway through, the rope snaps. You're told to fix it. With what? Your belt. so you do. Now your trousers are tied with twine. It holds. Mostly. You return. Load again. Repeat. By midday, you don't sweat anymore. Your body is too efficient for that now. It just aches. Quietly. Continuously. You find yourself staring into the distance a lot. Not dreaming, just letting your mind wander. Because it hurts less than paying attention. A child offers you a chunk of turnip. You take it. You eat it slowly. It tastes like nothing. You savour that nothing. Later, you dig a ditch for a latrine. It smells like decisions. You wipe your face with your sleeve and instantly regret it. Still, you dig. Your back is now a tightrope strung between regret and collapse. You fantasize about sitting down, but you don't. You dig. Because stopping means attention, and attention is danger. You're invisible. You're a tool, and that somehow is safer than being a person. When the sun begins to sink, and it never really rises, you stop. Not because the work is done, but because the light is gone. Because the tools are harder to see than the bruises they leave. Because someone calls enough, and you obey. You return to the tavern in silence. Muddy, sore, stinking, you find your spot, you sit, you're handed a bowl, you eat. You don't ask what it is. You don't taste it. You just chew. You just swallow. You just continue. Because that's what survival means now. You work, you hurt, you eat, you sleep, you wake, repeat, forever. By now your muscles no longer feel like yours. They're more like extensions of someone else's demands. Someone larger, louder, richer, who told you to lift something, dig something, move something, and you did. Because that's what your body is now. A lever, a shovel, a worn tool with skin. You don't remember the last time you stood up straight without wincing. You hunch now, automatically, protectively. You walk like someone carrying invisible weight, because you are. In every joint, every ligament, every step, you have learned to pace yourself, not to save energy. No, to avoid failure. There's no glory in speed here. No reward for getting it done faster. All that gets you is another task, a harder one with fewer instructions and sharper edges. So you work slowly, steadily, with the rhythm of someone who knows exactly how many motions they can make before their shoulder gives out. You don't push, you don't rush, you don't speak unless spoken to. You can serve. Not strength, expectation. You've become fluent in the language of labour. A single grunt can mean, past that, a shrug. This is broken, a squint. I might faint, but don't stop me. No one wastes words out here. They cost energy, and energy is always in short supply. You've started naming your bruises. It began as a joke, something to amuse yourself when silence felt too loud. But now it's a habit. The dark blotch on your thigh is Bernard. He's old. Purple fading to yellow. Respectable. The one on your forearm is new. Sharp-edged. From that time, the wagon jumped a rut and the side plank caught you. That one's called Julia. You have a sore on your ankle that might never go away. You call it the Little Knight because it stabs you every time you walk. Naming them helps. A little. It gives shape to the pain. Makes it personal. Memorable. Less like background noise. More like a cast of unpleasant roommates. You live inside a bruised house. And your body is the house. You don't plan anymore. There's no point. Plans are for people with options. You don't have a tomorrow, just a not yet. You know the routine too well. Wake before dawn. Blisters in your boots. Cracked lips. teeth that ache with the cold. Stretch wrong, pull a muscle, bend wrong, split your trousers. Say the wrong thing, get reassigned to chamber pot duty. You carry wood, stone, mud, trash, grain, water, tools, insults, fleas. You don't ask questions. That's dangerous. Questions suggest curiosity, and curiosity suggests education, and education suggests cleverness. And clever people are either feared or used. You've learned to make your eyes dull, to keep your mouth half open in a soft, idiotic expression of neutral servitude. No one notices a fool. No one fears a mule, so you become both. A dumb mule in human clothes. One night you fall asleep sitting up. You dream of something soft, a bed, maybe, a feather pillow, the sound of quiet. You wake up with a wet shoulder and someone else's elbow in your side. You don't move. It's warm at least. And warmth is rare. Even if it smells like turnips and unbrushed teeth. Someone once asked you what you wanted. You didn't know what to say. Wanting is a luxury. You don't want, you need. You need food, water, a safe place to sleep, a day without a new injury, a moment without someone yelling. Beyond that, it's just noise. You stopped dreaming the first time you coughed up blood, and no one looked concerned. But still, you work. You always do. Because work means survival. Because if you don't work, you don't eat. If you don't eat, you don't move. And if you don't move, well, you're not ready to be that still yet. You've begun to forget what your hands look like before the cracks. Not metaphorically, literally. The skin has changed colour, texture, shape. Constant exposure to wind, grime, splinters, buckets, blades, sacks of grain, icy water, and things no one should ever touch with bare skin has turned your fingers into tools. Bent, tough, slightly crooked in places that used to be straight. You look down at them sometimes, those hands, and think, they belong to someone else. But they don't. They're yours. They just don't resemble you anymore. This is what labour does. It's not just the weight you carry on your back. It's the shape it carves into your identity. Once, you thought you were clever. Witty, maybe. You had ideas, plans, sarcasm in your bones. Now your entire self has collapsed into 3 priorities. Don't fall. Don't lose your place. Don't be late. You've become reliable. Not in a way that earns you trust or raises. In a way that earns you more work. You, carry this. You, go again. You're strong enough. No one asks if you want to. They just assume you will. Because you always do. Because the moment you hesitate, you become visible. And you've worked too hard to stay invisible. You've also become quieter. Your voice still works, technically, but it doesn't get used unless necessary. You speak in gestures now. Shrugs, grunts, the occasional raised brow. Language costs energy, and you have to budget that like coin. Besides, the things you used to say don't make sense here. There's no audience for philosophy when your neighbour just lost 2 fingers to a rusted hinge. There's no appetite for jokes when someone fell into a fire last week and no one flinched. You save your voice for things that matter. Done. More? Where? Sometimes, please. And rarely, thanks. You say it to the old woman who hands you a crust of bread when you're not on anyone's list. To the girl who patches your sleeve with a needle she probably borrowed from a corpse. To the boy who doesn't know your name, but always nudges the warm spot closer to you when space is tight on the floorboards. Gratitude still exists here, but it's quiet. like everything else. Laughter, though. That still survives, but it's different. It's not joyous. It's not full of life. It's bitter. Sharp. Painful. It cuts through the muck, like a snapped bone. You laugh because the stew had bones again. You laugh because the fence fell on the man who built it badly. You laugh because someone farted so loud during prayer they got blessed twice. You laugh because otherwise... What? Cry? No. No one here cries. Crying means softness. Softness gets stepped on. You laugh. Then you go back to work. And somehow all of this feels normal now. The grind, the silence, the aching hands, the stiff knees, the little victories, like finding an onion, like finishing your bowl, like getting through the day without being scolded. You've stopped dreaming of more. You've started hoping for less. Less pain, less yelling, less to carry, less to dig, less of everything. That to you feels like peace, not gain, but absence, the subtraction of suffering. That's what you long for now. Not joy, just quiet, stillness, nothing. You learn your place quickly, not because someone tells you, but because every part of the world reminds you. Every glance, every order barked without a please, every cup handed to someone else first. Your name isn't important here? In fact, no one asks for it. They don't need to. They already know who you are. Lower, not noble, not landowning, not skilled, not feared, not useful enough to be protected, not poor enough to pity, just one layer above expendable. You don't wear a badge that says this. You don't need to. Your clothes say it. Your posture says it. The way you hold your cup with two hands, because it might be the only one you get all week, says it. There are rules here, unspoken, but enforced. Rule 1. Don't sit where the better fed sit. There's a bench near the hearth. The good bench. No splinters. Slightly straighter legs. If you sit there, someone will say, that's not for you. If you don't move fast enough, they won't speak again. They'll just shove. Rule 2. Don't eat before those above you. You learn this the first time a server hands you a bowl and then yanks it away with a sneer. Not yours yet. You stand there, ashamed, until someone more important is served. They get meat, you get broth. You don't argue. You don't even frown. You nod. You sit. You eat what's left. Rule 3. If you're blamed, you're guilty. Someone knocks over a mug. A loud one, frothy ale spills across the table. People look around. The man who dropped it shrugs. You made eye contact 3 seconds too long. It was him, he says. You're suddenly on your feet, explaining nothing. Because there's no use explaining. Your face has already been decided. They laugh. They clap the real culprit on the back. You sit back down, slightly smaller. You're always beneath someone. The innkeeper. The tradesman. The hired muscle who wears a dagger just to stir his soup. Even the children know it. One of them called you mudlegs yesterday. Threw a pebble at your shoulder and ran. You didn't chase. That would have looked bad. And no one would have believed you didn't start it. So you let it go. You always do. Because pushing back just gives them something to push harder. You watch the pecking order from your corner. The way the blacksmith drinks for free. The way the baker's daughter sits where she wants. The way a man in a clean cloak earns a nod without speaking. And you keep your eyes on your bowl. You eat quietly. You listen for when someone might need a body to carry something. You offer your hands before they have to ask. You laugh at jokes that aren't funny. Because being liked is the closest thing to protection you'll ever get. You become skilled in small humiliations. Not because you want to, because there's no other way to function here. You learn to nod without agreeing, to smile without joy, to carry things you didn't drop, to apologise for things you didn't do, and you learn to do it quickly, quietly, reflexively. Not because you're weak, but because dignity is expensive, and no one here is lending credit. The innkeeper calls you Hans. Never your name, not even you. Just Hans. As in, Hans, mop this up. Hans, shift that barrel. Hans, fetch wood. You don't correct her? You can't. Not because you're afraid. Because being noticed for the wrong reason is worse than not being seen at all. Once, you tried to offer an idea. Just a small one. About moving the water buckets closer to the hearth to keep them from freezing overnight. It was practical. Helpful. The room went silent. Someone laughed. You were told flatly, "Don't think, just move." And you did. You moved. Your lips shut themselves without your permission. The idea slipped from your tongue like it had never existed. You never tried again. There's a sort of theatre here. Everyone plays their part. The loud ones bark and boast. The quiet ones scurry and serve. The lucky ones laugh without flinching. The unlucky ones stay very, very still. You've become part of the background. A piece of the set. A fixture of the tavern scenery. People hang their cloaks next to you. They bump you without apology. They speak over you, through you, around you. You're a stool that breathes. And when someone does look at you, really look, you freeze. Because it means they need something. To borrow your labour, to test your patience, to mock your posture, to relieve their boredom with your misery. You prepare for the worst and hope for invisibility. It rarely lasts long. There's a merchant who comes through once a week, wears rings on every finger, smells like spices and overconfidence. Every time he enters, people shift. They offer seats, smile too wide. They try to stand closer, as if wealth might be contagious. One time, he dropped a coin on the floor. You picked it up, handed it back. He didn't thank you. He didn't even meet your eyes. He took it like it was owed, like you were just the floor's extension. And everyone nodded, because that's how the story goes. You've stopped expecting fairness, stopped seeking credit, stopped believing you could rise through usefulness. Because usefulness is only admired when it's rare. And you're too available to be impressive. Too tired to be novel. Too poor to be dangerous. Yeah, so you bend your head, lower your eyes, and disappear just enough to avoid becoming the day's entertainment. Fear runs this place. Not loyalty, not respect. Fear. Soft-spoken, quiet-footed, deep-rooted fear. It shapes how people speak, how they move, how they look at one another, or more often, don't. You hear it in the silences between sentences, in the way someone's voice drops mid-word when a higher pair of boots walk past, in the way no one finishes a thought if the wrong person enters the room. There is always someone watching, even when there isn't. The butcher gets free bread. No one knows why. No one asks. But if someone takes his seat at the wrong table, they find themselves outside faster than their bowl hits the floor. The man doesn't threaten. He doesn't need to. Reputation travels faster than voices. And bruises tell stories no one forgets. There are games people play, not the fun kind. Not dice or cards or stolen apples tossed like tokens. These are social games. Tests. Traps. Someone says, "What do you think of the steward?" You pause. This is not a question. It's bait. Too polite, and you sound like you're trying too hard. Too critical, and you risk being overheard. Even silence is dangerous. It says you're thinking too much. So you smile, lightly, empty. Say something useless. He's tall. They nod. They laugh. You passed. This time. People test each other constantly. By what you wear. By how you carry your cup. By how long you take to respond. Every answer has a weight to it. Every hesitation has a cost. And everyone is trying not to fall. Because when someone drops, someone else climbs. One night, a fight breaks out over a spilled drink. A boy shoves a man twice his size. The room holds its breath. The boy was wrong. The man has scars. He grabs the boy by the neck and holds him over the table like a sack of flour. No one stops it. Not because they approve, but because it would be worse to intervene. Afterwards, the boy limps out. No one follows. He doesn't come back for days. When he does, his eyes are different, quieter. He nods more now, laughs less. He's learning the rules. Even kindness can be dangerous, especially kindness. If someone offers you something for free, they want something. If they don't take payment now, they'll take it later. A favour. A secret. A seat at your fire when the wood runs low. Trust is transactional. Smiles are currency. And debt is heavier than coin. So you learn to accept humiliation as a kind of currency. You let the joke happen. You duck your head when someone throws a crust your way and calls it charity. You carry the bucket. You wipe the table. You say yes, even when you mean, "I hope you choke on your dinner." Because the alternative isn't rising up. It's falling harder. There's a strange magic in how people hold authority here. Not because they deserve it, not because they've earned it, but because no one dares say otherwise. A man with a cleaner shirt gets the last seat by the fire. No one knows his name. He says he's a merchant. He says he's been to Rome. He says a lot. You can tell by the way he holds his mug, with 2 fingers, pinky raised like a candle stub, that he's never done real work. But everyone listens to him. They nod when he speaks, laugh at his jokes. He says, "I once dined with a bishop." He says, "Salt is more valuable than gold." He says, "Only fools sleep on the floor." You are the fool on the floor. You say nothing, because he speaks with certainty. And certainty is power. Even when it's hollow. People above you often perform being above you. They exaggerate it, as if they're afraid you might forget. A guard tells you to move a barrel, even though it's not blocking anything. You move it. He smirks. Not because he needed it moved, but because he needed you to move it. He needed to see you obey. That's what power is here. Not justice. Not wisdom. Just control. And the more visible the control, the better the performance. You've seen it happen again and again. Someone too hungry to wait their turn. Someone too tired to bow fast enough. Someone who forgot to look small. They're reminded. Publicly, loudly. Laughter sharpens like a knife. A boot finds a shin. A fist finds a table. A mug accidentally tips, and the tavern nods. This is how the order is kept, by spectacle. You've learned your role in this theatre. You hold the props. You nod in the background. You know when to laugh, when to shrink, when to clap politely at the tail of a man who once bedded the king's cook. You don't believe him. No one does. But he speaks loud and smiles wide. So no one says otherwise. Because the lie has power, and the truth has mud on its boots. Once, a man tried to challenge the script. He stood during a toast, interrupted a noble's nephew mid-sentence, called him boy in front of everyone. It was bold, it was stupid, it was beautiful, and it ended poorly. The man was dragged outside, came back missing his boots and one eyebrow. No one asked what happened, because everyone already knew. He left town the next morning, hitching a ride on a cart of onions, never returned, and now, when the noble's nephew tells the story again, he's taller, richer, his boots are newer, his voice deeper, his lie has grown legs. The room listens, because listening is safer than contradicting. So you perform too. You bow, you flatter, you nod even when you ache. Because survival isn't in rebellion. It's in playing along, convincingly, quietly, convincing even yourself. You cross yourself before you eat, not because you believe the stew won't kill you, but because someone once told you the devil loves an unblessed stomach. You're not sure if it's true, but it's easier not to find out. You cross yourself again when you pass the church, when you hear bells, when someone sneezes more than twice. Out here, belief is muscle memory. You repeat what you've seen done, because not doing it makes people stare. And in this town, being stared at is almost always a prelude to something worse. The church is always watching. Even when no priest is present, even when the door is locked, its presence looms like a third moon. It doesn't need eyes, it has ears. It has mothers who whisper. It has bakers who tithe loudly and drink quietly. It has children who parrot sermons without knowing what they mean. And it has you who still wear the tiny iron charms sewn into your sleeve. You who still avoid speaking aloud when the wind is too strong, just in case it carries your voice to the wrong spirit. You who have seen what happens when someone mocks the saints. You remember. Everyone does. A man once laughed during a funeral. He said he wasn't laughing at the dead, just at a joke someone told earlier. It didn't matter. By sundown, his door had been marked. By morning, his cow was dead. By nightfall, he'd packed and left. No one saw him again. No one talks about it now, but everyone crosses themselves twice before laughing these days, just in case. The tavern has its own religion too. Not in saints, but in rules, in omens, in superstitions that shift from town to town, but always feel like they were carved into the wood itself. Don't drink from the mug with a crack. Don't speak the name of someone who's passed before sundown. Don't whistle after dusk. Bad luck or bad spirits. Don't eat stew on Tuesdays. No one remembers why. They just don't. There's a woman who reads bones. She doesn't advertise it. She doesn't need to. People find her. They pay in coin or bread or favours they never name. She doesn't speak in riddles. She tells you plainly what she sees. You went once, long ago. She looked at your hands and said, "Yours is a life of repetition." You didn't know what that meant. Now you do. You haven't gone back. Not because you disbelieve her, but because you do. No one reads the law here. There are no printed codes nailed to walls, no scrolls of rights, no town criers rattling off rules. The law lives in memory, and memory bends toward those who speak with certainty. Someone says, "That's not allowed." You ask, "Since when?" They say, "Always." And that's the end of it. There's no court, there's the steward. His decisions aren't questioned. Not because he's wise, or just, or fair, but because he has boots and a voice that doesn't crack under pressure. He settles disputes with quick judgments and quicker punishments. Sometimes it's coin, sometimes it's work, sometimes it's shame, and sometimes it's public. There's a post near the centre of town. You've seen it used. A woman accused of stealing bread, tied there in the cold. No trial, no chance to explain. Just a rope and 3 hours of exposure. She didn't cry. That's the part you remember most. Not the cold, not the stares. Just her silence. As if guilt was never the question. Just position. Just power. Just proximity to someone who said, "She did it." Punishment here doesn't always mean pain. Sometimes it's exclusion. You're not spoken to, not greeted, not served stew. You're invisible on purpose. And nothing hurts more than that. You've seen it happen. To a boy who swore during Mass. To a girl who danced on a Sunday. To a man who said something unkind about the weather and was blamed for the next flood. The town forgets them for a week, sometimes longer. And when they're welcomed back, they smile wider, speak softer, tithe more. Because now they know the cost of being too visible in the wrong way. You live in fear of guilt you don't understand, of sins no one defines clearly, of the rules that shift with the wind and harden when convenient. What is a lie? What is theft? What is disrespect? You could ask. But the answer would change before the day ends. So you don't ask. You obey the tone, not the words, the glances, the silences. You learn to read discomfort in others like weather signs. That's your real compass, not scripture, not town ordinances, but the tightening jaw of a passing elder. The side eye of a woman who folds laundry too quietly. The absence of your name when soup is served. That's how you know you're wrong. Even if you're not. Belief here is not about what's true. It's about what's safest. You pretend to believe. Because pretending protects you. And eventually, if you pretend long enough, it becomes real. You start crossing yourself even when you're alone. You whisper prayers to saints you can't name. You apologize to the hearth when you burn bread. You tip your head when the steward rides by, even if he doesn't look at you. Because all of these are spells, little protective gestures, against punishment, against notice, against guilt. There are prayers for everything, for waking, for working, for crossing bridges, especially old ones, for bad stew, for childbirth, for burying animals, for hearing your own name in a dream. You learn them over time, not from books, from murmurs, whispers in passing. Old women muttering as they knead dough, boys repeating them mockingly, then whispering them again later, just in case. You find yourself repeating the same ones, even the ones you mocked, especially those. Every action here has a sacred version. Not because it needs one, but because it makes people feel better. There's a proper way to wash your hands. A correct number of times to nod when passing a shrine. A specific order to step into a room, right foot first, if you don't want bad dreams. No one tells you this directly. You just notice who's scolded when they do it wrong, or who gets blamed when the baker's fire goes out, or when the goose won't lay, or when someone dies in their sleep without warning. You learn fast, Because everyone's looking for a reason. And they did it wrong is reason enough. Morality here is visible. It's not about kindness. It's about ritual. It's about whether you bow deeply enough. Say, blessings be when someone sneezes. Whether you show up to Mass, even if you sleep through half of it. God doesn't need your attention. The town does. They're watching, not your heart, your gestures, your posture, your tone. And if you get them wrong, the suspicion starts to bloom. Not all at once. Quietly. Like mould on bread. You notice it when people start standing a little farther away from you in line. When your stew is ladled slower. When people forget to greet you by name. That's how you know. Something slipped. You missed a kneel. You crossed yourself out of order. You nodded at the wrong sermon. You don't even know what you did. But they do. So you overcorrect. You bow lower. You speak softer. You leave bread at the small stone shrine near the edge of town. The one for travellers. The one they say protects ankles and keeps wolves away. You offer a prayer in a voice barely above a whisper. Forgive what I don't remember. No one hears it except you. And maybe that's enough. Religion isn't the shape of your belief. It's the shape of your behaviour. You perform piety to avoid punishment. And in time, the performance becomes muscle memory. You kneel when you ache. You mutter thanks when you're alone. You touch your chest in the pattern of the cross, even when no one's watching. And you hope, quietly, desperately, that someone up there sees it and lets you live another day. You don't fear hell because of fire. You fear it because everyone tells you it looks like here. But worse, colder, hungrier, no stew, no hearth, no chance to say sorry. Just the familiar aches of now, made eternal. Guilt is currency here. Everyone carries it. Some wear it openly, in bowed heads and trembling hands. Others carry it in silence, like a stone in the mouth. You confess to things you didn't do, not to lie, to survive. You say, forgive me, even when your only crime was forgetting to kneel during the third bell. You apologise for thoughts you didn't have, for feelings you didn't feed, for sins someone else imagined for you, because you'd rather carry the burden than be seen as unrepentant. That's worse than being guilty. That's pride. And pride, they say, was the first sin. Sometimes you wonder what you even believe, if anything. Do you fear the saints? Do you love the divine? Or are you just scared of hunger? Of being cast out? Of being the one blamed next? Your prayers are frantic sometimes. Not for forgiveness, but for invisibility. Please let them pass me by. Please let them forget my name. Please don't let them ask what I think. Because thinking is dangerous, and silence is holy. The people above you believe differently. Their faith is indulgent, decorative. They wear it in silver, in polished shoes, in loudly recited Latin they don't understand. They make mistakes too. They skip prayers, break vows, speak lies over bread. But when they fall, they confess with confidence. Their guilt is theatrical. Yours is personal. You once saw the steward curse during a funeral. He spilled wine on himself and shouted a word you were beaten for saying at age 9. Everyone heard it. No one said a thing. A child laughed. His mother slapped him. That's how it works. The higher you are, the quieter your sins become. The lower you are, the louder your silence sounds. There's no such thing as innocence. Not here. Only delay. Only the chance to stay unnoticed one more day. So, you stay small, you obey, you bow, you keep your eyes down, when the priest rides by on his mule, rosary swinging like a weapon of absolution. You nod when he says, God sees all, even though part of you hopes he doesn't. Not today, not like this. And maybe, deep down, you don't want saving. Not really. Because if salvation came with softness, you wouldn't know what to do with it. You saw a man today with a bucket nailed to his head. Not on purpose, not as punishment, just life. He was fixing a rafter. The bucket fell. It hit just right, slid down and stuck. Someone tried to yank it off, but the handle caught behind his ears. He sat there quietly for a while, breathing like someone trying not to scream. Eventually they left the bucket, cut out eye holes, punched air vents with a nail. He's still wearing it. He nods at you when you pass. You nod back. Because that's the kind of week it's been. Someone died in the tavern last week. Just slumped forward into their bowl mid-sentence. No one panicked. Someone took the bowl. Someone else took the boots. Eventually the body was moved. A new person took the seat. No ceremony, no grief. Just a small ripple in the surface of daily suffering. You ask what happened. Someone shrugs. Could have been stew. Could have been Tuesday. That's how things go here. No certainty, just probability. The apothecary says your cough is a sign of balance. Too much heat in the lungs. You need cool herbs. Or a frog in your pocket. He's not sure which. He sells both. You buy neither. You drink warm water and pretend it helps. The cough stays. Like a roommate with no rent and a deep sense of entitlement. A woman near the market claims her pig speaks Latin. She charges a copper to hear it. You pay. It does not speak. She tells you the pig is shy. Another man says his chickens are haunted. One lays square eggs. Another sings at dawn. You don't believe him. But then again, belief here isn't about truth. It's about entertainment. And no one has the energy to question miracles if they're funny. Once, someone in town tried to self-medicate a bad tooth. He used a hammer. He now whistles through a gap and insists he feels better. You believe him, not because he's convincing, but because he's still alive. And that's rare enough to qualify as wisdom. You're sick, not dramatically, just the usual, a cough that won't leave, a fever that comes and goes like a lazy ghost, aches in places you didn't know you had muscles. You try to ignore it, you fail. So you go to the healer. She lives near the edge of town, just far enough away to make you question whether illness is worth the walk. Her hut smells like wet bark and crushed hope. Inside, bundles of herbs hang from the ceiling like dried bats. A goat is sleeping in the corner. You're not sure if it's hers. She greets you without looking up, says, "You've got too much blood?" You ask how she knows. She says, "Everyone does." She offers options. Leeches bleeding with a knife. Sweating it out in a pile of warm turnips. You choose none. She chooses for you. She places leech on your arm with a tenderness that feels inappropriate. It wiggles. You gag. She says that's the sound of health leaving your body. You wonder if she means the leech or the noise you just made. Someone else in town had their stomach pains treated with boiled moss. They boiled it in goat's milk and drank it through a bone straw. Their pain got worse, so they added vinegar, then died. People now say he died because he didn't bless the moss first. Not because he drank vinegar through a sheep's thigh bone. The apothecary swears by powdered glass, for headaches, for coughs, for you can't remember. You stopped listening after powdered glass, but he believes it, with the passion of a man who's never tried his own medicine. A girl nearby broke her leg. The carpenter said it. He's not a doctor, but the bone looked like a bent chair leg, and that's his specialty. He tied it to a piece of fence and told her to stop walking for 6 months. She tried to walk after 2. Now her leg makes a clicking sound that clears out small rooms. She laughs about it, says it helps her find chickens in the dark. There's a belief that frogs draw out pain, that if you sleep with one under your pillow, you'll wake up lighter. You tried it once. The frog escaped. You found it in your boot. It did not feel like healing. There's always a new cure going around. Rubbing onions on your chest, drinking from a copper bowl under a full moon, whispering your symptoms into a well. The well whispers back, sometimes. You don't ask what it says. You've learned some mysteries deserve their silence. But here's the strange part. Sometimes these things work. Not often. But enough to make people keep trying. Enough to make you wonder if the goat fat really did help that man's back. Or if the widow with the singing boils just wanted someone to listen. Medicine here isn't science. It's community. It's effort. It's tradition. It's something to believe in when nothing else makes sense. And when you're sick, you don't ask too many questions. You let the woman with the leeches do her work. And you hope the goat doesn't wake up angry. A man lost his hand last week. Not in battle, not in crime, in a bread oven. He was cleaning it. Someone lit the fire from the other side. No shouting, no warning. Just a sudden scream and the smell of cooking that made people avoid stew for a day. They gave him wine, then more wine, then a knife. He passed out before they had to use it. That, they say, is a blessing. He now sells mushrooms with one hand and a sign that reads, "Better this than bread." Children here play a game where they dare each other to drink puddle water. Sometimes it's fine. Sometimes it's 3 days of sitting in the woods behind the tavern, swearing vengeance on every cloud. One boy drank from the well behind the blacksmith's house. He now sees colours no one else does. He's become a sort of oracle. People pay him to guess the weather based on the flavour of dirt. He's been right 3 times, and no one questions the rest. A soldier passed through the tavern recently. Half his ear missing. He had no teeth and smelled like rust and dog hair. He told stories of war, glory, blood, the kind of tales that make children sit up straighter and adults shift uneasily. He said, "The hardest part is the noise." Then paused. Not the fighting, the waiting. Then laughed for 10 seconds straight into his empty mug. No one joined him. War is always somewhere else. But its pieces arrive often. Men with missing parts. Women with vacant eyes. Children who no longer speak above a whisper. Once, a cart came through town filled with shields and one boot still attached to a leg. The man driving it said, "Spoils. You didn't ask whose." Death here is casual, accidental, sometimes even funny. A man was crushed by a barrel of dried peas. People laughed, not because he died, but because it took 10 minutes to find him beneath the legumes. They buried him with a handful of peas in his pockets. Said it was fitting. Said he'd feed the worms and the worms would dance. It's not cruel. It's how people cope. If you can't laugh at the absurdity of it all, you end up talking to barrels or climbing into ovens And yet, for all the horror, there's something oddly bearable about it. Maybe because no one pretends otherwise. People don't walk around acting like life is sacred and perfect. They expect it to be messy, short, sticky, and when someone dies, they raise a mug, say something crude, spill a little stew, and move on. That's the rhythm. Misery, laughter, soup, misery again. There's a cough going around, worse than usual, wetter, lower in the chest. People cough and look at each other like they've already started planning the burial. They don't say the word, they never say it, but they all know. You've seen the signs, the shaking, the sweating, the way someone suddenly goes quiet mid-conversation and stares at the wall like it just gave them bad news. Sometimes they recover. Sometimes you wake up and someone's blanket is folded neatly on a bench and no one talks about why. Someone sneezes. Someone else leaves the room. No one touches the door. There's a bell the priest rings when someone dies of unexplained causes. That's what they call it. Everyone knows what it means. You stop counting the tolls. You stop asking who. You just note who's missing from the stew line that evening. Disease here is democratic. It doesn't care if you're rich. It doesn't care if you pray. It shows up in the water, in the air, in the shared mug no one wanted to wash. And once it arrives, the fear spreads faster than the illness. People cross themselves when you clear your throat. You apologise for sneezing like it's a crime. You hold your breath near strangers, just in case. And still, people laugh. They make jokes. Call it the sleepy rot. Say it's what happens when you love soup too much. Claim it's the ghost of an old cook who died angry because someone salted his porridge without asking. Because if you don't joke about it, it wins, and nobody here wants death to think it's clever. Then there's the gallows, not used often, but never forgotten. Set up near the market square, unavoidable, wooden, stained, tall enough for everyone to see when it matters. You watched once. You didn't mean to. You were just walking. Then the bell rang, then the rope swung, and someone you barely knew became history. No last words, just a drop, a snap, and then silence thick enough to chew. Later someone said, "At least the stew's hot?" You laughed. You didn't want to. But it came out anyway. Public punishment is theatre. It's not about guilt. It's about warning. Someone steals a chicken, they lose a finger. Someone mocks the priest, they lose a week in the coal pit behind the church. Someone makes too much noise in their sleep, and no one sits next to them again. Not because it's justice, because it keeps the rest of you scared enough to behave. Fear is the flaw here. You sleep on it, eat on it, step around it. You learn to live with it, like it's a roommate who never leaves. And the only way to stay sane is to make fun of it. To call disease the bad stew ghost. To call the gallows the tall stool. To say I'm fine with blood in your teeth. Not because it's true, but because the lie is warmer. And sometimes warmer is enough. You're sitting in the corner of the tavern. Again. Same bench. Same crooked table. Same bowl. Same smell. Same draught slipping under the door and curling around your ankles like it's missed you. The same candle. Burning. Always lower than you think. Always threatening to go out. And you realise you haven't had a real thought in days. Just instructions. Muscle memory. Reactions. Corrections. You're not living this life anymore. You're just performing it. like you're still auditioning for a part in your own body. You wake, you work, you ache, you eat, you rest, and none of it feels like anything. You used to count the days, then the weeks, then the moons. Now it's just before the cough, after the blisters, between freezes. You forgot your own voice recently. You went all day without speaking. Then when you did, your throat cracked like old wood. No one noticed. You weren't surprised. You think about leaving sometimes. Not to anywhere in particular. Just away. You imagine walking past the edge of town, beyond the trees, into the mist. Just keep walking until the ground changes, or the stars look unfamiliar, or your knees finally give up and fold you into the dirt like a forgotten cloak. You wouldn't call it running away, just falling forward. But you never do, because you know what's out there. More mud, more work, more people who won't ask your name, but will tell you how to lift something heavier than you. So you stay, because the devil you know at least serves stew. You envy the dog, the one under the bench with fleas and half an ear and a growl like a tired storm. He eats scraps, sleeps on straw, gets kicked sometimes. But people talk to him. People say his name. You haven't heard yours in weeks. You used to imagine a better version of yourself. Stronger. Smarter. Dry. Someone with cleaner clothes and whiter teeth, and a full pouch of coin that made noise when they walked. Now you'd settle for a day where your knees don't pop every time you bend. You'd trade glory for silence. Trade legacy for soft bread. Trade love for a night without shivering. You're not hopeless. You're just still here. Still moving, still doing the things. Even when they mean nothing. Even when no one's watching. Even when the candle burns out and no one bothers to relight it. You can't remember the last time you smiled without irony. Not a smirk. Not a wince that someone could mistake for amusement. A real, full smile. One that started in the chest and made its way up. You think maybe it was when someone fell off a stool trying to impress a goat. Or maybe when that old man sang a lullaby to his bread. But you didn't smile for long. Smiles draw attention. And you've learned attention is a tax. You pay it in bruises, in labour, in obligations you didn't ask for. So now you let the smiles happen inside. Private, quiet, untaxed. You still notice beauty. A little. The way frost gathers on a window like lace. The smell of wood smoke after the rain. The sound of someone humming while sweeping the hearth. Small things. Stupid things. Things that don't cost anything, and therefore can't be stolen. You hold them like pebbles in your pocket, not valuable, just smooth, comforting. You've developed rituals no one knows about. You touch the same knot in the wood when you pass through the door. You blink 3 times before saying, "Good night." You always sit with your left shoulder toward the fire, even if it's not burning. It doesn't mean anything. Or maybe it means everything. Maybe it's the only thing left that you get to choose. You've stopped expecting kindness, which makes the rare moments hit harder than they should. A barmaid gives you an extra chunk of bread and pretends she didn't. A boy waves instead of running past. Someone asks how your hand is, even though you didn't mention you'd burned it. You don't cry, not anymore. But sometimes your chest tightens, like your heart remembers something your brain forgot on purpose. You've started talking to yourself more. Not full conversations, just little things. Might rain. Too quiet. Watch the step. The way an old man talks to a stubborn mule. The way a ghost talks to a house. You're not lonely. Exactly. Just unsupervised. You don't want a better life anymore. You just want a moment that doesn't ask anything of you. No hauling, no scraping, no listening to someone lie about what they own. Just stillness, and maybe a clean shirt. One that doesn't itch where the seam splits. You'd trade your last coin for that shirt. You'd trade your name. And here's the strange part. Despite it all, despite the mud, the cough, the stew, the noise, the silence, the wait, you're still here. That counts for something. Maybe not pride, maybe not success, but endurance. And endurance is its own kind of prayer. You've stopped calling this life hard. Not because it isn't. It is. Deeply, repetitively, comically. But calling it hard implies a comparison. Implies there's an easy life somewhere you missed the turn for. You don't believe that anymore. You think maybe everyone's aching somewhere. Some just do it with better shoes. You've learned to lower your expectations beneath the floor, to stop asking, why me? And start asking, will this stool hold? To treat luck not as something to chase, but something to step around carefully, so it doesn't notice you. When someone gets extra meat in their bowl, you don't envy them. You wonder what they'll have to do next to pay for it. When someone says, I had a good day, you watch their face closely to see if they mean it, or if it's just their turn to lie. You used to dream about being known. Now you're thankful for being ignored. You used to long for adventure. Now, a day with no new bruises feels like a holiday. You used to wish for change. Now, you just wish for consistency in the badness. At least that way you can plan for it. Still. Somehow, there's a rhythm to this misery. A dull comfort in repetition. You know how the day will unfold. You know which doors creak, which chairs wobble, which dogs bite. You know who to nod at, who to avoid, who will pretend not to see you when you're limping. There's structure in this pain. It holds. Like a bad roof that somehow keeps out just enough rain. And once in a while, something good happens. A coin found in the mud. A spot by the fire that no one claims. A stranger who listens when you speak. And it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't lift the weight. But it shifts it. Just a little. Just enough. And for one moment, you're not crushed. You're just held. You think maybe this is what peace looks like here. Not joy, not rest, not release. Just the absence of new wounds. Just the slow, slow breath that says, I've made it through worse. You've stopped waiting for the story to change. This is the story, and you're still in it. And for now, that's enough. No summary, no lesson, no triumph. Just the low hum of a tired body sitting very still, like the last candle burning out, and no one rushing to relight it. Because maybe it's time for dark, and maybe dark is enough